Hey everyone, Mario again, coming at you with another review. Today I'm reviewing a film that I watched last night for the first time ever. I know some of you are probably going to see from the title, you're going to go, what, the first time you've never watched this film? And especially those who know me are going to say that because they know I'm a big fan of Stephen King, yet I've never watched this film. It's true, I haven't even read the book either. The film, of course, is the 1999 film directed by Frank Darabont. It is The Green Mile. The film is also written by Darabont based on King's novel of the same name, and it stars Tom Hanks, David Morse, Michael Clarke Duncan in what is arguably his breakout role, Bonnie Hunt, James Cromwell, Michael Jeter, Green, Sam Rockwell, Barry Pepper, Gary Sinise in a small role, with music by Thomas Newman. Now the film has an 8.5 on IMDb, a 94 with the audience on Rotten Tomatoes, and an 80 with the critics. So basically most people love this film, and I can say after watching it I can see why. I really did enjoy the film. Granted, it was the edited versions of certain parts were, I don't know if there was any parts that were edited, picture wise. I noticed some parts that were edited, language wise, but didn't hurt the viewing experience. Makes me want to get the DVD one day down the road, and when I get my hands on it again, read the book. And I can certainly say I could see why it got all the awards and award nominations it did. It got 4 Oscar nominations, including Best Picture and Best Supporting Actor for Duncan. Now, one thing I must address when it comes to the critical praise it got is that a Forbes commentator mentioned that Michael Clarke Duncan's character fits the magic Negro figure. For those of you who don't know what the magic Negro is, it's a term describing a stereotypical fictional black person where they're basically saintly, non-threatening, and their sole purpose is to solve problems to help make a white person happy. Now, I actually have read some fiction mostly when I was in college, about this, so I know more or less about what a magical Negro figure would be like. But I don't really consider Michael Clarke Duncan's character to be a magic Negro. I mean, some of the elements are there, but to me, it just comes off as a coincidence. Now, I know someone will probably argue, hey, but all the people he helps in the film are white. True, but remember, this movie takes place in the South, the post-Civil War era, but it's the pre-Civil Rights era. So, what are the odds that they would have someone who wasn't white working in the position that Tom Hanks' character works in? And they could have, but just doesn't seem like it would fly. Now, if it was like the North, I can imagine that. And to go with that, Duncan's character seems like he would help anyone no matter what, whether it be white, black, blue, green, purple, four-armed. He just seems that type of person. Now, the plot of the film is it starts in modern-day Louisiana in a nursing home where we're introduced to Paul Edgecombe, first played by Dobbs Greer as an older man, but this is Hank's character. One day, him and the fellow tenants are watching a movie called Top Hat, and he begins to cry. His elderly friend shows concern for this, and Paul tells her a story about when he was younger working as a prison officer when he was in charge of the death row inmates. Then it shifts to 1935, where it remains, where we see that Paul, along with his fellow guards, played by David Morse, Jeffrey DeMunn, and Barry Pepper, unlike, the stereotypical prison guard, they actually show some small kindness to the prisoners, or at least the ones that don't make their life a living hell. But this is more so a trait that Paul has. I mean, from the way that Tom Hanks plays it off, you could tell that he's a character that he's going to be firm if he needs to be. He's going to be authoritative if he needs to, like if it's a prisoner that's giving him lip. But if the prisoner, minds himself and doesn't try to be too aggressive, he's going to, be civil. Be civil with him, he'll be civil with you. And you can tell that the prisoners under his care like him, even though they know that in the end he's going to have to give the orders to throw the switch. And the prisoners, at least the couple that talk, they seem content with that. And one day we're shown a new prisoner coming in, and that is Duncan's character, John Coffey. Coffey, if I'm pronouncing that right. Is it Coffey? I know I just watched the movie, or Kofi or whatever. It's probably a weird pronunciation. I'm just going to refer to him as John, just to make it easier. Now, he is a giant of a man which this shows how creative Darabont is as a director, because he had to use trick photography for this, because Duncan's about the same height as David Morse, and he's a little bit shorter than James Cromwell. So they had to be creative with the camera in certain places, and certain ones you could tell they probably just had him, they're standing a similar thing, but he's on a step lower, so he's eye level with him and other stuff. But it's really creative how they did it. But anyway, back on synopsis track. He is convicted of raping and killing 2 young white girls, and he arrives in prison, which of course, since we know the location and time, we can kind of see how he would have been convicted and sent to death row. I mean, whether he did it or not, which this is a minor spoiler, but we find out by the end of the film he didn't do it, which then you're like, especially when we see all the flashbacks, it's like, okay, we could see how he was convicted of it, and we could sort of see why they didn't look at this other suspect, especially because of the time and all that. And that's part of the thing that makes it sad, more so us the audience, because we, in the future, hindsight, but you can also see it in the other characters when they find out. I know I'm jumping ahead, but I had to mention that. Now, when they first meet John, all the guards notice there's something weird about him, because John, he's shy, he's soft-spoken, he's a very emotional person. So, me personally, I can identify with that. I mean, when I'm still shy, I'll talk to people I know pretty well and, talk. I am semi-emotional, but I don't really express it a lot, I prefer writing and all that. So, it's just, I identify with him. But we find out slowly he has healing powers, like Paul at this point is suffering from a bladder infection. I thought at first he was passing a stone, but it's a bladder infection. So John takes it from him, and he later helps a mouse. And of course he does something by the end of the film I don't want to spoil, but it's a major part of the film. Now, as this is going on, we have a new guard named Percy, played by Doug Hutchison, who is he's a sadist guard, and he causes one of the saddest moments in the movie, other than, of course, the ending. And that's when he sabotages an execution. It's the character played by Michael Jeter. Now, since they do the electric chair, anyone who has even a basic knowledge of the electric chair knows they would wet your head with it. Well, instead of wetting his head, wetting the sponge before he puts it on, he leaves it dry, which sabotages the execution. Now, I don't know if in real life this would have sabotaged the execution like that, but, story, we're going to let it happen, and, Hollywood has never had a problem with twisting physics to make the story good. I mean, action movies do that all the time, and here, I could buy this happening, and it is sad to see, and then, of course, you just want to smack Percy, but by the end he gets his comeuppance. I'm not going to spoil it, but all I'm going to say is 2 birds, 1 stone. Now the ending, I guess you can kind of figure out what happens. It's no secret John gets executed in the end. I'm not going to spoil all of the thing that happens with it, but it is a sad, sad moment. Mostly because by this point, both we, the audience, and the characters in the film know that John is innocent of the crime he was convicted of. And we know that with how they found out about it, they can't really go tell the warden or even higher up about it, because they'd be like, what do you mean? You tell them the story, it's like, It'd be like, basically like Whoopi Goldberg's character in the TMNT reboot when she's listening to April O'Neil. It's like, get the hell out of here. It's like that. You listen and then you get out. And of course, he gets executed, but he goes to it willingly, so I guess you could say there it kind of ties in with the whole religious, there's a semi-religious tone here, mostly because, he's doing miracles, so the fact he's, healing people, and then he is executed for a crime he didn't commit, so there's some Christ imagery there. It's hard, I wouldn't really say it's subtle, but it really fits the tone of the film. But he doesn't really die for anyone's sins. He dies for, well, technically he dies for the sin of someone else committed, if you think about it, but it's not like he's going, remember, I died for your sins. Especially since the person who committed the crime does get punished. I'm not going to spoil it. The score by Newman is excellent. Darabont, his use of the camera and how he directed all the actors is pretty well. All the actors get along and they have a rapport with one another. You believe that Hanks, Morse, and the others are friends who have been working together for a while. Hanks and Hunt have good chemistry as Mr. and Mrs. Edgecombe. You believe them as longtime husband and wife, even though they only have a couple scenes and only one love scene, which I'm guessing that's one of the parts that probably was edited, but who knows, when I watch the unedited version I'll find out. Doug Hutchison is such a dick as Percy. You really want, like I said before, you really want someone to smack him, and when something actually happens to him at the end, you're like, okay, you deserve that. Even though he's only in one scene, at least in the version I saw, Gary Sinise does a good job as Bert, who is John's lawyer. John Cromwell is always good to watch, and he was great as the warden here, which, in retrospect, it's kind of interesting to see him play a nice warden here when a couple years later he would play an asshole warden in The Longest Yard remake, so it's kind of like a balance here. It's also nice, on another note, it's also nice to see a nice warden in this movie when the previous Stephen King movie that Darabont directed, Shawshank Redemption, which, as a side note, is on the TV right now, it's just muted, that one had an a-hole warden. So that's also a balance there. And of course, it's also interesting to note that one of the actors in this film, I'm gonna looking at IMDb on my phone because I have to look at the faces to say which one it is. Jeffrey DeMunn, who is one of the guards, Harry. He was also in Shawshank Redemption. He just played the prosecutor in that one. Of course, you look at his face, I know him now more from The Walking Dead, but another Darabont connection there. This is another little thing I noticed when looking at the cast. One of the characters' names is Dean Stanton. And the reason I say this is funny is because actor Harry Dean Stanton is in the movie as a character named Toot Toot. See, that's a little funny thing, but that's probably just a coincidence because but they had the character named Dean Stanton and then the cast actor Harry Dean Stanton. Wonder if Darabont noticed that and like, that's kind of funny. There's not really much else to say about the film. It runs at 188 minutes, which, if I'm doing my math correctly, that's a little over 3 hours. So for some it might be a little long in the tooth. For me more because, watching it on TV there's commercials. But there never was any time in the film where I was bored because the story drew me in. Now watching this movie in the theater it probably would be a little bit more difficult because you're sitting like this the whole time and that's 3 hours. Now with an intermission might be a little bit better, but I can't really think of a place in this movie to put an intermission. But then again, maybe watching it unedited, I'll figure it out one day. But I can't really see cutting down this movie without hurting the story. Maybe we could cut out the first execution, but it kind of seems necessary. The only way you could cut it out is if you eliminated that character entirely. Yeah, definitely a film that will, if it's on TV, I can see myself watching, just like Shawshank Redemption. Funny enough, another Darabont film there. It's a film, if I'm bored, flip through channels like that, I'll watch it. I would definitely say it's among my favorite of the Stephen King films. I haven't seen all of them, but I can tell you I definitely would watch this film over the Shining miniseries. Maybe over the Kubrick film too, but with the Kubrick film I have to be in the mood to watch it. This film I could always say I could watch any day, but sometimes maybe because of the length I'd have to be in the mood too. Shawshank Redemption, shorter film, I can watch that any time, but I'm probably just alone in that. But I have to bring that up. Both Darabont. Nothing much more to say about the film. If I'd have to give this film a rating, it'd probably be 4.5 out of 5 stars, and it does come with my recommendation, more so if you are a fan of King, and of course Darabont, and of course any of the actors in the film. Now, I have to say if there's probably any issues I'd have with the film, can't really think of one off the top of my head. Maybe another watch or two I might think of something, but just one watch I can't really think of any major problems I have with the film. I mean, like I said before, the length might be a problem for some people, but for me, length didn't bother me. Usually length doesn't bother me if the story draws me in. It's only if it draws me in and then there's like a lull period where it gets too boring or something like that, or the film I don't like at all. Like if Twilight was over 3 hours, then I'd be like, I'd need a lobotomy by the end of it. But